Members of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Independent Senator Angus King of Maine and Republican Senator James Lankford of Oklahoma. Gentlemen, I'll start with you, Senator Lankford. What's your assessment of what's going on the House side, your counterparts of the House Intelligence Committee?
Yeah, obviously not cooperating together. I've not had any conversations with Devin Nunes or any of the House intelligence members to be able to know the inside baseball and the palace intrigue that's going on over there. So we're just staying focused on doing our task. We've got a task to do, and we're continuing to do it. We'll let them work out their differences on that side.
I understand that, but let me ask you, Senator King, I know you're a sophisticated consumer of news. You watch television, you read the newspaper, you've seen what's been unfolding over there. Is it your sense, again, I've heard this from tons of Republicans on the Senate side, that the House committee has now essentially discredited itself to the point where it really is just down to the Senate and you fellows there and ladies on your committee to get this done?
Well, I think we feel that responsibility, and that's why we're really working at making this a nonpartisan investigation. We're at it. We have our first major hearing on this in a few hours, and we're going to try to do it and avoid some of the infighting that you've seen on the other side. I don't really want to comment on that, but you're seeing an independent and a Republican standing here. You saw our chair and ranking member yesterday. It's not going to be easy. I mean, I don't want to pretend that there aren't going to be some conflicts. This is a difficult issue and has partisan overtones. But I think most of our members realize it's too important to fall into that.
Hi, guys. Senator Sam Stein here. I have two questions for either of you. One is, what is a reasonable time frame for this investigation to conclude? Obviously, this is hanging over the White House, the administration, a lot of unanswered questions. And then two, for each of you, what is the one question that you want answered that you haven't seen answered yet with respect to this investigation?
Well, whoever wants to take that, go ahead, Angus.
I'll start with the time frame. It's very hard to say because there's a mountain of material to plow through. There are thousands of pages of documents. Both of us have been to Langley to go through the documents ourselves. There's a lot more to go. So I optimistically say 6 months. It may be longer, but I think that's a reasonable target given the volume and the complexity of the investigation. Remember, this is about the Russian hacking, whether there were connections with the Trump campaign, and importantly, what the Russians were trying to do with state election systems. So that's going to take a while, and I think realistically 6 to 8 months hopefully is going to be sufficient.
To you, Senator Lankford, what's the one element or question that you feel hasn't been appropriately answered that you want to get an answer to?
Yeah, obviously we've got to get connections, whether there was any connection with the Trump campaign and any collusion with any Russian officials. There's no question now that Russians were trying to affect our election. They were trying to engage and destabilize, the exact same thing they do across Eastern Europe and all across Europe itself. They do this active, what they call active measures, trying to be able to basically tear down democracies. So we know that. We've got to be able to find out if there's any other connection, to be able to have good hard evidence in between, and to be able to get a clear statement. This will take a while, as Angus was mentioning as well. We can't rush through it, but we are definitely going where the facts lead, and the commitment from both sides of the aisle is wherever the facts go, that's where we go on this. We've got to be able to pull politics away from something this intense.
Senator Lankford, it's Bianna Golodryga. I'm monitoring a conference where Vladimir Putin is speaking right now, and one thing that he said is that he wants a friendly relationship with the U.S. Knowing what we now know, what you just stated, that Russia did try to influence our election, do you think that we can have a friendly relationship or should have a friendly relationship with Russia? And a second question, I know for a fact that Vladimir Putin is just as surprised as many of us here that this conversation and topic has turned partisan. How do you feel about that, and should this be a partisan issue?
No, I would tell you Vladimir Putin's always pleased when there's anybody fighting in the United States. That's part of his goal, is to be able to tear down the Western world, the United States, and to be able to rip apart democracies. So I have no beef with the Russian people, and I hope in the days ahead we can have a very good relationship with Russia and the Russian people. But as long as Vladimir Putin is influencing the nation the way that he is, and his leadership style, and trying to constantly interfere with every democracy, it's very difficult to be able to trust the Russian leadership, and so develop a good relationship with the Russian people, which we hope for in the days ahead.
Senator King, are you pretty confident that the American public will have confidence in the Senate Intelligence Committee investigation as opposed to a select committee or a special prosecutor?
Well, I think that's a really important question, and I think the answer is yes if we do it right. And that's one of the reasons I'm pushing, and so is James, for as many open hearings as possible. Because if we go behind closed doors for 6 months and then come out with a report one way or the other, I don't think people are going to buy it. I think people have to ride along with us. They have to see the evidence that we see the witnesses that we see. It can't be all in public because there are some sensitive intelligence questions involved of sources and methods, how we got the intelligence. But I certainly, I mean, a big part of the purpose, there are really two functions. One is to lay these issues to rest and let the American people understand what happened. But let's also talk about the future. This isn't a one-off. The Russians are doing this everywhere. They've been doing it in Eastern Europe for 10 or 15 years. They're going to do it again here. They're going to be back in 2018, 2020, 2024. So a big part of what we're doing is how do we prepare ourselves and defend ourselves against this new form of aggression.
Right. The Russians are doing it right now. It's Angela Merkel in Germany. They're going to continue to do it in France. They're going to continue to do the same method. We've got to be able to confront it.
So, Senators, just for our viewers, can you explain the difference between what's happening in the House and what's happening in the Senate, and specifically just for other lawmakers and legislative bodies across America that may be facing some partisan challenges? What is your Intel committee doing differently? What are you guys doing right? Do you talk to each other every day? Are you all specifically on the phone with each other saying we can't let happen in the Senate what's happening in the House? How are you getting it right?
Well, we'll let time tell how we get it right on it. And I think Angus is correct. We've got to continue to work together. What we are doing is talking about it openly. We've had multiple meetings behind closed doors where we hash out process to make sure everyone's keeping informed. The chairman and the vice chairman are doing a very good job sharing documents, sharing information, going to all kinds of briefings together so that they don't have a sense of one has more information than the other one has. And then there's a lot of conversation about where are we going in the time, who are we going to call up as witnesses, who's going through the documents, what are staff doing in the process. So the more that we can talk to each other, the more that we can establish trust. As everyone would say, there is no such as a nonpartisan investigation. And there are at times people say, well, let's do an independent investigation that's separate from politics. You can't find 10 people in this town that have no political connections on it, especially that go through security clearances. So it's important that we do get it right. We continue to talk it out and make sure that we settle this.
Senator King, I ask you the same thing. Why are you guys running this differently than the House? Why are you all cooperating?
Well, I think we knew from the beginning that this was going to be the challenge. And, we went through a lot of discussions, hours and hours of phone calls and meetings, and a deliberate, conscious discussion of the dangers of letting this fall into a partisan dispute. I think some of the members on both sides have been key to that. Marco Rubio, for example, keeps saying, look, folks, this could happen to us. Putin is neither a Republican or a Democrat. This year, he favored the Republican candidate. 4 years from now, it could be just the opposite. He could be, blackening the name of a Republican candidate or a Democratic candidate. I think there's the reality of this is sinking in, that this goes way beyond what happened in 2016. And I got to tell you, one of the things that really worries me that hasn't gotten much attention was that the Russians were poking around in state election systems, voting machines, registration lists. That's something that really we've got to focus on, because what if, just imagine, where would we be if we learned that they had changed a couple of 100,000 votes in Michigan and Wisconsin? I mean, we'd have a true constitutional crisis, and that's we don't, all the evidence is it didn't work. They were unsuccessful, but they weren't doing it for fun. They were probing and testing, and part of what our study has to come out with, our report, has to be how do we prevent and help the states to defend themselves.
And you're exactly right, and Marco Rubio's exactly right. What Vladimir Putin did to the Democrats in 2016, he could do to the Republicans in 2018 and 2020. So this impacts everybody. Hey, guys, thank you so much for being with us. Senators James Lankford and Angus King, we greatly appreciate it. Keep up the great work. Now, in our next hour,